anything now. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. I'm Avi Pinsky. I'm here with Dovid Azerad, and we're going to address certain issues that might be holding back your business and how you can grow your business going forward, getting ready for 2025, and finishing 2024 out as strongly as possible. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or post them in the chat box. And at some point when I'm able to see my screen again, we will try to address them. So let's dive right in. So as I said, I'm Avi Pinsky. I'm a business finance coach. So I want to talk to you about a process that you can use to examine your finances in your business and see which areas are working well for you, which areas need a little bit of work, and how to take a systematic approach to identifying those areas and what to do about them once you have identified them. So I'm going to walk you through a 6-step process. The first step in the process is setting targets. Right? When you're setting targets, when you're setting goals for your business, you want them to be smart. Right? You want them to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So we're going to talk about how to set those targets. We're going to talk about how to analyze them on a regular basis and make sure, whether you're actually meeting them or not. We're going to forecast what you think is going to happen for the remainder of the year, the month, the week, whatever. So step 2 is seeing where has my business gone so far in the year, the last 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is. The forecast is seeing what's going to happen the remainder of the month. When I add step 2 and step 3 together, I can get a estimate of what I think the entire picture is going to look like throughout the entire year, right? Throughout all of 2025 or whichever year or period you are analyzing. Based on that, I can then give myself a score against those targets that I set in step 1. Once I do that analysis in step 2 and that forecasting in step 3, where do I see my business as a whole? Where is it scoring against those targets that I set? The 5th step, I'm going to set objectives for how can I get things back on track towards those targets, right? If there's certain things that are not living up to expectations or to those goals, right? In step 4, there were certain things that weren't doing so well on the scorecard. So which ones do I want to try to attack and where do I want to try to get them going forward? Those are going to be the objectives. In step 6, what am I going to actually do about it to accomplish those objectives that I've set in step 5? So that's the 6 steps that we're going to walk through. So step 1, we're going to set targets. You're going to set goals for growth in your company. We want them to be measurable targets, attainable targets, something relevant, right? As we said before. We're going to divide up our company. I like to divide up our company into 3 parts. There's your revenue, your profit, and your cash flow. And each one has 5 parts. Right? Revenue is made up of your leads, your conversion of those leads, your retention of previous clients, how often people come to purchase from you, and how much they spend when they come to purchase in your store or your business or your service. Profits is going to be what's left after you have all the expenses in running your business, right? Your cost of sales, your payroll, marketing, overhead, any other income or expense items that you have in your business, whatever's left over after paying off all those expenses is going to be your profit. However, that's not really the full picture of how your business is doing, right? That's kind of where people stop a lot of times. They say, oh, after I take into account all my expenses and all my revenue, so I've got net profit of $1 million, whatever it is, right? But that doesn't really tell us the whole picture because there's other items that affect the cash flow of the business that you have to pay attention to, right? And unfortunately, these are the things that are oftentimes overlooked and misunderstood, but they can have the biggest impact over whether your business can actually pay off its bills. Because let's look at accounts receivables. You might have serviced a client for $100,000 and they owe you $100,000, but if you don't actually collect on that, they don't actually pay you for that service. So then you're going to have a hard time using that money to pay off your bills, pay off your vendors. So even though on your bottom line, your net profit, it looks like you're profitable, if you didn't actually collect from your clients, right? You have a bunch of IOUs that are just piling up. That's going to have a very negative effect on your ability to run your business. Also, if you're an inventory business, that's gonna play a role in your cash availability. If you purchase assets, let's say you have a delivery truck or machinery that you have in your business, that's gonna play a role, even though it's not gonna necessarily show up in your profit and loss. Any debts or owner's equity transactions as well. So you want to set targets for all 15 of these drivers, or at least however many of them are applicable to your business. The way you're going to set that target is first by looking at what did I do last year for all of these, and what's a realistic target that I can set for this year. So if I thought that I had 100 leads last year, can I bump it up to 1,000 leads this year? Probably not. But can I get to 110, 120? Probably. You're going to do that for all your 15 drivers, and you're going to come out with what is the total revenue, profit, and cash flow that you can expect for your business. And you kind of want to look at that and say, am I happy with it, right? Do I like that target? Do I like those goals that I've set? And I have a workbook that I'll if there's time, I'll show you towards the end of the presentation, where you can use this workbook, plug in your numbers, and see where do I end up in revenue, profit, and cash flow. If you like the way that those numbers shake out, that's great. You can move on. If not, you have to think, okay, which ones of them can I realistically change? And which ones are going to have the biggest impact if they change, right? If I get 10% more leads, is that going to make a big enough difference? If I increase my profits if I increase my prices by 10%, is that going to have a big enough difference on the bottom line? And play around with the numbers and see which ones make the biggest difference and a big enough difference for you to be happy with those targets. So once you've set the targets, then have to analyze, okay, where have I gone so far in the year? So by January 1st, I want to have my targets all laid out. This is what I'm shooting for 2025. At the end of January, how far have I got, right? On a monthly basis, or if you're, depending on how complicated your business is, maybe quarterly, maybe every 2, 3, 4 months, whatever works for you when you're in your business. You want to analyze it and see, how have I been doing to reaching these goals? How many leads have I gotten? I wanted to get 110 leads this year. In January, I only got 3. Okay, that's a problem, right? Or maybe in January, I got 20. That's great. I'm doing wonderfully. I'm going to exceed my targets. How many of those leads did I convert? How many previous clients came back? How many did I retain? And you want to go through this analysis for however many of the drivers apply to your business, right? There are 15 drivers. They're not all going to apply to every business, right? Not everybody has inventory. Some people take retainers, so they're not always going to have an accounts receivable balance. So you want to look at your business and see how many of these apply to you, to your situation, and how are you doing for each one so far, this amount of months into the year. And then after that, I want to look at that information and extrapolate to the future. If I've only gotten 3 leads in all of January, can I expect that I'm going to hit that 110 mark by the end of the year? Probably not, right? Unless there's some sort of seasonality to your business that you want to take into account, right? Maybe your business is slow from January till April, and then it's really busy for the middle part of the year. So you want to take that into account when you're forecasting what do you think is going to happen down the line. Something very important to think about, right? If you're selling winter coats and by the end of February, right, you're only 10% of the way done with hitting your goals, you're probably not going to reach them because you're not going to really sell anything until maybe October, November time, right? So are most of your sales November to December, or most of your sales in January, February? You're not going to have really much else in the middle of the year. So you really want to focus on the seasonality of your business when it comes to forecasting and seeing where do you expect to come down the pipeline. After that third step, you then want to total those together, see how many leads do I expect to get? What does my conversion rate look like? All those targets that you set in step 1, you want to then see, okay, how do I expect the whole year to be against those targets? You want to be keeping score in your business so that you're not just kind of guessing and seeing, well, where do I think I need to make changes? You're not running your business by the seat of your pants. You can actually look at your business as a machine and evaluate which parts of it are doing well and which parts aren't. Right? Which of those 15 drivers are doing well and which ones aren't. And you want to look at a scorecard so that you have a way of evaluating each one on its own. And again, part of that Excel that I will show you if there's time. So there's a scoreboard built into that as well. And once you look at your scoreboard, it'll tell you which of those targets you want to try to affect, which ones you want to try to change, right? Which ones aren't doing so well in the performance of your business. And that scoreboard will give you an overall picture of the health of your business, how your business is doing as a whole. Once you have that scoreboard in place, and you can look at each part, each of the drivers by itself, you can then create an objective based on which driver you want to try to fix. Right, you're gonna the scoreboard is gonna tell you which driver needs to be fixed, and you want to then narrow it down to, or it'll tell you which of the drivers are broken. Essentially, you want to then narrow it down to the 2 or 3 per month that you want to focus on and try to fix that area of the business. It could be that on one month you might look at all of your drivers and say, well, they're all underperforming. It's good to know that. But if you're going to try to create an objective for every single one of them, you're going to get very overwhelmed. Right? The point of this process is to try to narrow down your focus so that you're not spinning your wheels in your business and being pulled in 20 different directions, trying to fix everything all at once. Right? You want to try to narrow down to which 2, maximum 3 in any one month. If I fixed 1 driver or 2 drivers, which ones should I focus on that would have the biggest impact on the overall picture, right? You want to see which of them, if I get it more in line with my target, is going to get the whole picture back into focus. And there's 3 aspects that I like to put into every objective. The first one is identifying the driver. You want to write it down. I'll show you a sample of some objectives in a second. You want to write down which driver are you focusing on. You want to write down where it's currently holding, right? Where do you think on the yearly, by the end of the year, where do you think it's going to perform? And then the third part is, where do you want it to actually be by the end of that month, right? So let's say going back to our example, I wanted 110 leads this year and I've only got 3 at the end of January. Okay, so right now, my yearly forecast is I'm going to get 40 leads, right? I want it by the end of the year to get to 110. I don't think I'm going to be able by the end of February to get it on track to 110. But maybe by the end of January, instead of having 3 leads by the end of February, instead of having 3 leads like I did in January, I can try to have 7 leads in February. And then in March, maybe I'll focus on that driver again, and I want to get 15 leads in March. And so you want to focus on, where do I want the forecast to be by the end of the coming month, right? So that I'm not overwhelmed by the task. Right, I want to get something where it's doable, it's attainable. Once I have those objectives, those 2 or 3 objectives identified, I then want to create an action plan, create actual next steps that I can do in order to accomplish that objective. Right, and I want to list them out in order of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it, and anything that I need to know so that it's concrete and it's attainable. Right, the objective that we identified in step 5 is diagnosing where the problem is in our business. And then the action plan is, what's the medication I'm going to take? What's the exercise regime? What am I going to actually do practically in order to fix that problem? And I want the most important steps that I can do within the next month that's going to have the biggest impact on the whole health of the business for the coming year. An example of an action plan. And you see in the objective, each one of the objectives has those 3 components. I want to decrease my cost of goods sold. So that's the driver that I'm talking about, right? Right now it's increasing 51%. I want by the end of the month that get down 45%. So it's the driver, it's where it's currently holding, and where I want it to hold. So that's the first part of my objective. My action plan is the objective. Then I want to list down all the next steps that need to happen in order to accomplish that objective. And then I want to delegate it. Right? I don't want all of this to fall on my own head. I want to delegate it to my secretary, to my managers, to my whatever, my accountant, my bookkeeper, whoever it is that I want to delegate it to. I want to write it down so that they can see it. It's in writing, and maybe I'll even print it out and put it in the pantry so nobody's confused about who's doing what. And I also want to assign a due date, because if you don't assign a due date, it's never going to get done, right? Parkinson's law states that a task will take as much time as it is delegated. So you want to make sure that there's a due date that makes sense, that's not too harried and too pressured, but it's also not at some point in the next 5 months, Susan is going to do this. No, you want to give Susan a realistic timeline, but something that's going to keep her accountable. And then I like to keep a place for notes so that if I need to say, okay, this year I'm getting it at 5%, maybe I want to make some notes about the next month. I want it to be at 35 and then at 30, whatever, just somewhere to put notes in case it's needed. So that's the 6-step plan. to identify what's going right in the business, what's going wrong, where the weak points are, and how to improve the business as a whole. And again, you do it for all the drivers: revenue, profit, cash flow, all 15 of them that apply to your business. And just want to take 1 minute quickly to run through the Excel. If anybody wants, I have a link in a second where you can put in a request, and I'll email it to you. This is kind of what it looks like. It gives you all the drivers, right? You see they're identified here: driver 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's columns T and E where you can actually input your numbers here, and it'll total it up, your total revenue, where you can expect your revenue to be by the end of the year, assuming you hit your targets. Then there's a tab that also focuses on your net profit. You put in your targets, and it'll total up for you your net profit. And then there's the cash flow tab as well. And then the fourth tab is going to be a scorecard where there's going to be a box for each driver where you can then grade it as it's doing well, it's in green, it's doing okay, it's in yellow, or it's something that I don't want to focus on, so I'm going to put it in red. Here are some links that you can use to request the playbook. You can go to my website, pinskyconsulting.com, and there's a link at the top where you can request the prosperity playbook. And if you want to book a call where we can discuss it and I can answer any questions, so here is a link where you can do that as well. Are there any questions? Stop sharing my screen. Any questions that anybody has? You can feel free to unmute yourself or type it into the chat. And if not, then I'll turn the mic over to Dovid. And again, if there's any questions for him, you can put it in the chat as well. And we'll probably have some time for questions again at the end.
All right. Thank you so much, Avi. Definitely feel free to hit your questions up in the chat. And I will begin my section of today. Definitely always informative and educational as always, Avi. So thank you for that. Just getting my screen going. We had some technical difficulties earlier, and we are ready to go. All right. I'm just going to keep it like this because it wasn't working for me before. Hope that's okay with everyone. All right. So the first question is, are you holding your business back? That's what we are talking about. And before we begin, I want to thank our sponsor and presenter, AdMart, admart.com. You can definitely check out AdMart after this presentation. AdMart is a platform that connects advertisers and publishers with people that have ad space. So if you have ad space or you're a publisher / advertiser, you should check them out. Feel free to keep your screens off. It's totally okay if you feel comfortable with that. I always love engaging with people that I speak with. So don't hesitate to hit up the chat. Don't hesitate to interrupt me. I was in education for more than a decade, so I'm used to that. I will ask open-ended questions, and if you feel like you have something to share, whether it's your insights or your experiences, we're all learning together, and I very much would like to hear your feedback and your insights. A little bit about me. My name is Dovid Azerad. I am a transformation architect. So I help decision makers become decisive and to be more present. How? Well, that's what today's webinar is about. We're going to go through a couple of examples. My work is deeply personal. It's my own experiences. It's my own education as I have been navigating through and I used to navigate through, continue to navigate through whenever I feel overwhelmed, stuck, disillusioned, unfulfilled, not making as much money as I wish I was, whatever it is in my journey. And as an educator, I have always been inspired to help people to learn more about, what I've learned in my journey. So I created a framework to help people easily find a way out and an exit from the feelings with feeling stuck. I call it the stall cycle. And when our feelings and our actions aren't serving us as well as they should be, we obviously always want to try to find a way out of that. There is a caveat that every journey to success is unique to you. And my role when I help my clients is to uncover their path, to disrupt their negative patterns, to equip them with the tools, the skills, and the vision to create that lasting and permanent, hopefully, environment within themselves in order to transform the way that they approach their own life and their business. Before we begin, I do want to shout out to all of you small business owners. And if you're not a small business owner, then you can join us in shouting out the small business owners for doing what you do. You have a very, very dynamic and roles and responsibilities. Whether you're a solopreneur, whether you have employees, your role is all encompassing. You have the weight of your business on your shoulder, and it's impossible to discuss all the challenges that you're going through, even though I think Avi definitely went through in the Excel over there many of the tools in the revenue streams that you might have of breaking out of those. But in the mindset challenges that you have, they're unlimited. So I decided to choose two topics that come up over and over again in my work. And if you are not facing these challenges, please, as I said, we're all learning together. I encourage you to chime in and tell us what works for you. And if you do have other challenges, I'm also going to share a QR code in the back of this presentation to book a call with me, and we can break through your challenges together. But these are just two examples. All right, so let's start with one of them. It is indecision. What does indecision look like? So indecision might look like something that we call analysis paralysis, where we're cycling through the options over and over and over again. We might be about to make a decision, and then we circle back to the original factors that come into play, and we're not really sure what we're supposed to do. Or we might be overthinking it. I had someone that I was working with that even if it was not a very long-term or large decision, he would go and find people to talk to and find people to bounce the ideas off of them. And it took a very long time for him to move forward and make a decision. Now, if you're just starting off in a business, then that might be a good option and a good idea to really find people to guide you in your, moving forward. But if you already have a business and you already have found success and you do have, pathways that you've used before that, have led you to finding success, a lot of times that is not serving you. And that definitely didn't serve him until we were able to work through that. Another reason why people might be holding back from making a decision, I found, is fear of the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen if I make that decision. What is the fallout that what are the repercussions? Another fear could be, if I make this decision, then how does that reflect on me as a person? I was working with someone that had multiple different businesses, and all of them were floundering because they had multiple businesses, maybe one too many than they should have had. And they didn't want to let go of any of them because they were like, well, I'm going to be a failure. I can't be a failure in my business. And until we were able to work on that, it was a very big challenge for them. 1 second, I apologize. Okay. On to the next. Another way that might manifest is through something that we all know as doom scrolling. Doom scrolling is when you're sitting on your phone and you're scrolling, Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook or TikTok or YouTube or anything. Reddit, could be really anything that you're just really scrolling through and getting those little hits of feel-good chemicals, whatever people call it. And in fact, this just came out a couple of days ago that brain rot, which is what it's called, what happens to you when you are stuck in this doom scrolling pattern, was the word of 2024 for Oxford University Press. So that's super exciting. So everybody, recognizes this. So what happens, when we're stuck in this indecision, we're stuck in these cycles where we're not moving forward. Okay, those are a couple of things that might happen. So we lose opportunity, whether it's opportunity to make money, whether it's opportunity to, find more fulfillment. There was one person that I was working with. She was the CEO of a small business, 30 employees, and she was micromanaging every single decision that had to be made, never really, trusting the people that had the responsibility to make that decision. And she was working 40 hours a week, more than 40 hours a week. And it was very, very overwhelming and stressful. And she really just wanted to be able to let go, but she didn't know how to let go. She didn't know which time to let go, which time to not let go, which time to, micromanage, which time to let people be responsible. And by the end of our work together, she was able to take Fridays off, cold turkey. She would just leave, not come on Fridays. And it went well, because once you find that clarity and once you find that vision, you're able to really do these things like that. You're able to transform everything about who you are and your business. And if not, then you will lose the confidence and the trust of your employees. If you don't have employees, then of your customers. If you're not making decisions and not moving forward with things, then people will be waiting on you, and that breaks trust. So how does that happen? Okay, so that was a case study, right, of indecision. So most of the times that we find ourselves feeling stuck, whether it's indecision, whether it's in another case that we're going to talk about soon, it's because we dig a hole of reactivity. Okay, we put ourselves into a hole of reactivity. And what that means is that we're taking in information, and then we react to the information, and then we repeat that pattern where we keep on falling into a cycle, a spiral, and we keep on digging ourselves deeper and deeper. And the only thing that we end up being able to do is a very, 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 very micro task, or a very short-term decision, short-term thinking. And we find ourselves just overwhelmed and stuck and not really being able to make those big decisions that we need to make. So what do we have to do? Okay. And the cost of that stall cycle, like we said, is very similar to the indecision. Maybe it also another, generalized way. It leads to burnout, stress, and all the different feelings that come from being overwhelmed and frustrated. So what do we need to do? So if we're stuck in a hole of reactivity, right, and we're not really moving forward, we're stalled. So we have to find a way out of that hole of reactivity. We have to become more proactive. We have to become more visionary. We have to really try or discover a way to break out of that. So the easiest and the most proactive way to do that is to approach everything with curiosity. So whenever we're looking to take in information, we should really be looking to learn from that information, as opposed to letting that information define the way we move forward. Okay, so I'm going to say that again in another way. We should not be receiving information and then reacting to that information. Okay, rather, we should be taking in the information in order to learn from it and in order to incorporate it into our decision-making process, because we choose how we want to act in all of the ways that we move forward. So if we go about things with curiosity, again, this is before the information comes in, then that helps us to not be reactive, because we are choosing to take in that information with a purpose. And that purpose is in order to make a decision. Okay, and this is obviously vague because this is a very general concept, but we will tie it into these examples that we spoke about. And then what happens if you took in the information and now you find yourself being reactive? You find yourself on the back foot. You find yourself behind the 8 ball, and you're not real. You're starting to make those very short micro-term decisions. So another easy thing to do is just pause. Just take a pause, take a breath, ground yourself with a breath, and be patient. And don't immediately react to things. Don't immediately push to make a decision, because it's probably a short-term decision that's perpetuating this cycle. That's not a real, in the case of indecision, it's not a real long-term visionary goal of what we're trying to accomplish. Rather, it's just to, whack-a-mole of whatever decision that is coming up immediately in the short term. So take a pause and then zoom out. See if you can try to tap into your curiosity and be like, what would my decision be if I wasn't taking in this constant stream of information? What would I be able to do, right? Just a random curious question that you could ask yourself about getting back in touch with your visionary self. If you do find yourself now in the cycle and you're just completely overwhelmed, you're frustrated, you don't know what to do with yourself. So it takes a lot of courage. And that courage is really breaking out of this cycle means that you are choosing to not continue in the path that you've been in, which is something that people don't usually like to do, and it's called change. Okay, change is not fun, and people don't like change. And if we are able to find that courage to break out of that cycle that we're in, then that will help us to be more decisive in the case of indecision. And now we're going to move forward with another example. And this is another example that comes up a lot is, as a small business owner, there are a lot of people that do things just like me, and I don't know why the customers are choosing them and not me. Okay, so the primary reason, if we would, want to diagnose it, what I would say is because we don't have clarity on what we do, and or who we serve, and or why we do what we do. Okay, so those are three entrances for us to find that curiosity and be able to break out of this challenge that people might have, where there's no differentiation between them, or they don't perceive their own differentiation between themselves and their other competitors. And that causes customers to commoditize us. That causes customers to look at you and be like, well, you charge X, the other person charges Y, so that means I'm just going to go with Y because I don't know why, no pun intended, would choose you. So what does that cause us to do? That causes us to now fall back into a cycle of commoditizing ourselves, which is not a long-term vision. It's rather a short-term. We're trying to whack-a-mole on finding that one customer, instead of really making a grander theme and a grander vision of who we are. And maybe we'll cut prices, or maybe we'll just change what we offer because it's like, oh, the customer's not liking that. Maybe it's because of that. But it's not really trying to tap into the big question, and this is a very famous big question that Simon Sinek talks about. It's find your why, right? Know your why. But there is a reason for that, because if you know why you do things, then that will help you to differentiate yourself between you and your competitor. If you know who you're catering to, then that will help you to differentiate yourself between you and your competitor. But if not, as we said, you're going to lose. I don't really follow the slides so well, but I do what I can. Anyway, so if you are able now to break out, okay, so you ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? How can I break out of this cycle? But not in a judgy, it's not a thought. It's more of a discovery. It's more of just zooming out and finding yourself and being able to look at the grander picture just by being curious, or by being patient and finding that clarity, or by just being courageous and just making a choice and saying, I'm going to be proactive. I am going to now zoom out, and I'm going to be curious about why, who, what, where, how, everything those are the questions that help us to break out of these cycles. Okay. And the key, as we said, the objective is to zoom out and leave this cycle of reactivity and leave this perpetuating negative feeling, these perpetuating negative feelings that we have. Okay. So I just gave a very, very quick general way of breaking out. Obviously, as we said, everybody's journey is unique, and everyone has different factors and different details on how that they're stuck. But I'm definitely open to taking questions. I'm definitely open to hearing what you might have to add. I actually forgot to share my There it is. I actually forgot to share my thing. If you want to either find how you're stuck and how to break out of your pattern that you're stuck in, you can follow this complimentary roadmap to growth, where we'll have a meeting and we'll just break through with you. No strings attached. This is just about you finding your path forward, and it's your personal plan to get out of your stall cycle. And I also have a waiting list that's for my group which is not necessarily me talking the whole time, but it's more of a workshop where everyone joins together and discusses things. I have a waiting list, and if you're interested in that, you can sign up for this one, and that's this QR code. I also have a WhatsApp group, which if you QR code this one, then you will be able to join that. Also, that's free, and I post one time, maybe 2 times a day about different strategies and different processes and different thought mindset patterns that you can have, different hacks that will help you to break out of your stall cycle. Does anyone have any questions, either for me or for Avi? We're both here to answer your questions. The floor is open. You can put it in the chat, or you can ask it, interrupt out loud, whatever you feel.
I shared my links in the chat as per Shoshana's request if you want to do that as well.
Check in the chat. Avi posted his spreadsheet, his Excel sheet. All right. If you do, I know I'd stop sharing. So if you do want to be in touch, I am on LinkedIn. It's Dovid Azerad. If you want to be in touch with Avi, it's Avraham, Avi Pinsky, also on LinkedIn. Those are the easiest ways to get in touch because that's our name. You don't have to remember email addresses or anything like that. Last call for anyone that has any questions, please feel free. Otherwise, you can go on your merry way, break out, find those roadblocks that Avi talked about, break out through what I spoke about, and wish everyone much success moving forward.